What's up, guys? So today we have new IFBB Pro Paul Kanu on the podcast. It's not so much like a Q&A structure like some of my other podcasts are. It's kind of us just catching up. I do know Paul personally in the last year or so. We've gone to the same gym. And so, part of it is just us catching up and some conversation. Obviously, I'm going to have timestamps down below. So if there's any particular topic you're interested, you're always welcome to jump to that. But it's definitely more of a conversation between the two of us. We get into what it was like prepping for a show like this, what he did differently than he did in his last competition where he did not win and get a pro card, and basically, what he would do going forward in order to make progress for the next season. So I hope you guys enjoy this one. All right, everybody. So we have back on the podcast, Paul Kanu. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a long week,
Yeah,
few.
I was gonna say a long few weeks. So what happened with your apartment, dude?
So basically, I was doing my laundry on a Friday, and my bed was like close to the heater. It's been there for like a whole year. Nothing has ever happened. But the one day that I decide to redesign my like room or whatever, um, all of a sudden I like left. I was like in the middle of it, and I left to go check out my laundry. And before I left, I like smelled smoke, but I wasn't sure if it was coming from my apartment per se, because they usually cook they usually have like barbecue outside. So I was like, okay, that's probably just them just making barbecue or whatever. So I went downstairs, checked out my laundry, came back up, and then all of a sudden there was like smoke.
Oh
And I
man.
was like, oh shit, okay, that's not good. So I got like water and stuff like that, just like kind of just like sprayed it on the bed, and then just kind of just throw it on the bed as much as I could to see if it would kind of go away. Obviously, it didn't after a good 2 minutes, and all of
Oh,
a sudden there's like all like the smoke and stuff in my apartment, particularly my bedroom. And then I was like, okay, I can't do this. So I just called the cops, called 111, and then they called a fire ambulance, and then they came up, and then they wrecked my entire place up.
oh man.
Going on, but my bed was sort of like fried.
When they came, did they just use water or did they use something different?
um, well, they basically, God, it was so long ago, even though it was like 3 weeks ago. But they basically came in. I think they used water. They had to kind of get it like all settled up and whatnot. So they
Okay.
went. The fire, the fire chief kind of like tripped and fell. I was just like, it wasn't really like a funny moment, but I was just like, okay. So
Man,
that
dude, that's crazy. I had a fire here. I don't know when it was. Actually, almost a year ago, probably. I think pre-COVID. Everything pre-COVID is kind of a blur. But there was just a candle going, and I don't know. Like I just like left the room, and then all of a sudden, I mean, thankfully this couch is like needed to get burned anyway. It's like a super ugly couch. Um, but yeah, like the whole armchair of it was on fire, and I mean, it wasn't too hard to get out. But yeah, I know it can get away from you pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what happened with me. But ever since that happened, a lot of bad things have been happening. Like a lot of bad, a lot of good things. When that happened, my Instagram blew up. So I don't know why, but that
Is
happened.
that so? I noticed that your Instagram like went from because when I met you, like I don't know, a year ago, whatever it was, you were at
Mm.
like maybe 18,000 followers, and then I assume like now you're at like I don't know what 30 or something like that. But I assumed that was because you were doing contest prep. Are you saying you noticed a spike when the fire happened?
Well, the funny thing is, one of the videos I made was like shared throughout. I think a friend of mine shared it, and then when
Okay.
it shared it, it went viral. And then when it went viral, all of a sudden I started getting like an influx of people just like just
Wow.
in, and then I was
Damn,
like,
man, I need to set my apartment on fire. Shit.
don't do that. But yeah, and then it's just I've just been kind of riding the wave, just trying to get clients and stuff like that from that, and just making more content, making videos, giving out helpful advice, just so I can kind of keep that wave going to
Yeah,
the point
awesome.
where I get a little bit noticed. So I'm
And
working.
yeah, so you just finished up your contest, man, right? You just new IFBB Pro, Paul Canoe. That's awesome. That was what?
Funny, I'm not gonna change my name to like the whole IFBB Pro Paul Canoe. I think
Oh
that's
yeah. I so did you compete against Callum von Moger?
Yeah, I did.
Because I saw the picture, I was like, oh damn. And then you were mentioned in Nick's Strength and Power video, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
He
so
mentioned you by name, so that was cool. But yeah, a lot of people were hating on Callum, saying that he didn't look anything like his Instagram pictures. He was like he's lost a lot of size. I mean, being in person next to him, how did he seem? I guess it was probably the first time you met him though, so you don't have a comparison.
it was the first time that I met him. The dude's big. The
Yeah.
dude's pretty. The lighting at the competition was not the best. So when people who weren't actually there were like looking at the show, they would
Mhm.
think like everyone's like out of condition. But
Okay.
I've been in quite a lot of shows, and I'm barely ever like satisfied with the competition. But
Yeah.
that show was so stacked with like people with like incredible physiques that I was just like, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah. Wow. And he came second in his class, right? What did you come?
No, he came first in his
He was
class.
first in his class.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's some other kid came in like second. I got the overall for my class, so that was nice.
Okay.
Yeah,
So how does that work? There's like your class was what?
class B.
Okay. So like there's it just broken up in different class.
Yeah,
And you did classic bodybuilding, right?
yeah.
Okay. So what class was Callum in?
I think he was in class C, which is
Okay.
probably the tallest class.
So you were in B and you won class B,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of the winners from the different classes then go up against each other?
Yep, all came together and then they battled it out in the finals.
And then who won that?
The guy from class A won.
Okay. I think I know who that guy was. I mean, I think I saw a picture of him.
Yeah, I mean, he was very conditioned. Like he was pretty lean and he looked really good overall. Um, I think he deserves it. For me personally, once I got my pro card, I didn't really care about the overall.
Yeah.
From this point on, the only overall that matters is going to the Olympia. Everything else is kind of like meaningless. Like
So do you
becoming.
have that goal to eventually be in like the Mr. Olympia Classic Bodybuilding?
Oh yeah, totally, definitely,
Okay. So you want to be up against Breon and
and all those. That's kind of why it's so exciting because like I only wanted that win for a professional title because I want to be able to be up against guys like that, not
right.
because I got my pro card. Blah, 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 blah. This is so
Right.
cool. All that. Like the card itself means nothing. It,
Yeah.
all it really is just a membership.
Right,
It's a
right.
to being a pro bodybuilder. Nothing special.
Yeah, I mean that's what I hear people say now is that like, they are kind of giving away more than they used to be. And I mean, I think you have to pay money to maintain it, right? Like a couple $100 per year or something like
Yeah,
that.
certain amount to maintain it. But other than that, it just gives you a bunch of different good perks here and there.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a picture of you standing next to Breon, I think, right? Like a year or two ago.
A while ago, I'm trying to figure out where it was. I've been trying to look for it.
Okay.
It's
Huh.
Brion Steve Larius or Larius, whatever.
Lars, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I had one with Steve.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, dude, when I see you, your structure, I mean, I don't see a reason. Like, there's some people where like you look at them like Trudell from DC Training. He was training Dusty Hanshaw. I don't know if you know Dusty, but
Yeah.
and when you look at him, like he's a beast, and tons of muscle. But like you can tell, like he's not ever going to be Mr. Olympia because he doesn't have the structure for it. He can go far, but
Mhm.
you just can see certain limitations. And seeing you, I really don't see any reason why you wouldn't, in theory, like obviously, it could be years away, but I don't see any reason why you couldn't be up there with the best of the best in classic bodybuilding. I mean, your structure is just like incredible, so I could see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, everyone have always been like telling me that since I was like a teenager.
Yeah.
Like you can probably go up there and stuff like that. But my problem is like I never really fully believed that myself
Mm,
because I like when you compare yourself to these guys who just look like ridiculously insane, you kind of feel in a way feel like you're just not there because they look so like monumental.
sure.
It's just not a thought. So I never really was like, hey, yeah, I'm gonna be Mr. Olympia kind of thing, like how most people are like, they started working out and they're just like, yeah, I'm gonna be Mr. Olympia or some shit like that.
Right.
Kind of just went through the process, just trained, just enjoy it. Never really once thought about being like an Olympia contender. So I guess last year when I competed and I was like a spot away from my pro card, I think that's actually what drove me this year because I was so disappointed in how I did. Because I did so well with my prep that when it got to like that final few weeks, I ended up kind of just like screwing myself in the foot. And I wasn't happy about it. So this year I was just like, I really regretted that. And because of that particular reason, I just put a little bit more effort in.
Yeah,
And
you were talking about that, and I mean, first of all, I think it goes to show some of the gifts that you have that last year you said like you were more lax on your training and your nutrition and you didn't win, but you didn't do bad, right? I mean, you're still pretty good. And so I think that just shows like you need to have everything, right? You
Mhm.
need to have the genetics, you need to have the consistency and work ethic, all of that. But you still did quite well. And, maybe somebody who has even better genetics could even go pro without trying that hard. I mean, somebody like a Phil Heath, he
Yeah.
probably could have gone pro, maybe not like obviously like a top level, but you're talking like such absurd genetics at that point that like maybe he didn't even have to try that hard. But
Mhm.
for you mentioned like, okay, this was the year that you put everything into every avenue. So nutrition, training, you got a coach, and all of that. So obviously, I mean, it paid off.
Yeah. And I was kind of surprised at myself because, like, as I was going through my prep this year, it was just such a weird, it was so weird just like looking at how the change was so drastic.
Hmm.
And I was just like, there are moments where I would look at myself, I was like, what? It's like, what? It's like, I look like this?
That's
It
awesome, man.
freaked me out because, like, I made so much progress this year alone just by simply just staying focused, being consistent with my diet, being consistent with my training, um, just putting a little bit more effort in. And
What was your stage weight this year compared to last competition?
it was only a pound more.
Okay. You just
Yes.
felt like a lot leaner.
Yeah, I was just a bit leaner, a little bit more muscle mass on me. Last year I was 176. This year I weigh in at 177.
Okay, so you were sub 180. Wow. And
At
you're like what, 5'7", 5'8", something like that.
5'7" and a quarter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think that speaks to. Have you ever taken like measurements, like your arms measure, for instance?
I don't think about that.
I know it doesn't matter from a bodybuilding like stage standpoint. The reason I ask is because I think it's very interesting when you look at like different like muscle shapes and insertions and stuff. Like something I've talked with Steve Hall and Abel Chabai about is like, okay, so like we all do podcasts, we're all 5'10" to 6'1", similar weights, and we all look very different in pictures, right? I mean, not like drastically different, but I mean, we definitely have a different a look to us and different structures. And
Yeah.
yet at a given height and weight, I feel like, it's pretty similar in terms of like measurements. Like if you take Abel's, mine, and Steve's arm measurements, they're
Mm.
all within honestly like half an inch of each other. Same thing with chest measurements, all within maybe like an inch, and then waist maybe like an inch or so. But it
Yeah.
looks so different. And so like with you, I don't know, but I would guess that at least like when you were on stage, I would guess maybe your arms were around 16, 16 and a half. But on me, who was nowhere near as lean and who's 6'1", that
Mm.
16 and a half might be like, it looks okay. And on you, it's like, oh shit, because everything that goes into there, maybe a little bit shorter, very lean, fuller muscle bellies. And so obviously there's a lot more to it than just how much muscle mass is on this individual.
Yeah. My arms have been about the same measurement for about 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So they've been about like 17 and a half, roughly.
Really? Okay.
So probably on stage with being carb loaded and even just being that like that lean, I
Mhm.
think they really lost much, especially if I had to like pre-pump before going on stage.
Yeah, yeah.
So they were probably a decent, I would say like 17 and a half.
Okay.
Because they never like fully, they never grow or anything. They've
Mm.
always stayed proportional to everything, so they're always like that exact same measurement.
Yeah. Huh.
No matter what I do, like they never seem to grow. They never actually ever hit like I might have hit 18 with a pump, but that was like so many years ago.
So
So
where do you think the major improvements came? I mean, obviously you got leaner, but do you feel like there were muscle groups that gained more size this season?
I think it was more lower back.
Hmm.
Lower back was very well developed, and hamstrings were ridiculously well developed. They've always been like one of my lagging parts. And this year they were like literally you can just see them pop. And I was like, okay, that's cool.
Nice.
Because in my head I've always thought I didn't have hamstrings. And it always like bothered me because I was like, oh, my hamstrings are pretty horrible. So I kind of just and hit them as much as I could. And eventually this year, like when they got lean, they were just like, I was just like this. It's just so crazy, just like watching the drastic change just happen in this entire year. I was just like, I honestly couldn't believe like what was going on. I literally,
Yeah. Wow.
but I think most of the change came from like my lower back and my hamstrings. My arms have kind of always been about the same. A little bit of the chest development kind of like happened, and some upper back, like back this year was like, okay, it was ridiculous.
In terms
So
of response?
in terms of response, it's always been very like quick to respond to like training stimuli.
Hmm.
So even when I was like little, my back was always like the biggest and strongest part of me. So this year it just kind of like responded in such a way that I'm just like, okay.
Do you do weighted pull-ups at all?
I do not, but I do regular pull-ups with just my body weight.
How many can you do, you think, if you had to do like a max set?
20 to 30 ish.
Okay. I saw a picture of you and Mike Isertel both doing a lat spread. And, at first, because like I know how you look, and at first I was impressed with Mike because I was like, oh, Mike's holding his own here. And, I know like, Paul is super aesthetic and everything, and Mike's, doing well holding his own. And then I thought about it the other way around, where Mike is like, what, like 230 or something like that,
Yeah.
and 5'6". So the fact that your back, again, due to the proportions and the shape and everything, looked at just as big. I mean, very different shape, but looked just as big as his. And you're talking about being like less than 180 and a little bit taller is ridiculous. And I think Mike has a ton of size, but it doesn't show as much, because of the difference in structure.
Yeah, that's also one thing I've been trying to sort of understand the whole like structure and the shape of the particular muscle and how they form. I've noticed there are some people who have like really good structure and they give out like that. It's mainly just the muscle bellies
Mm.
and how it's shaped. Some people have really good muscle bellies. Some just don't have really good muscle bellies, but they make the best of what they got.
Right.
And that always makes a huge difference. But yeah, my back for some reason has always been such a strong point, and just the way that it's shaped from like the width all the way down to like the way that it hangs from the lats
Mhm.
and that lower the lower back, which gives it that V taper. It's just like yeah, so it's been
Yeah, the tiny waist. Like I said, if there was like one thing I could change to improve my aesthetics, it would be the waist because mine's pretty wide, and like I would look at like my back, and my back's a strong point for me as well. But because I have a wide waist, it's like it looks pretty good, and then it's just like like it just doesn't. It's like go in, come on. And obviously, there's nothing you can do besides just try to get wider. But I think that's definitely a big advantage. I'm trying to think of who. There's like a pretty top level pro. He's like top 10 and he has a ridiculous waist. Even though I mean he's probably like 240, 250. I'm sure it'll come to me later, but he that waist is just so tight. Even though he's like one of the bigger guys now,
yeah.
he's maintained that small waist that obviously a lot of these guys have a trouble doing, as it blows up.
Is he the guy from Canada?
I don't know if he's from Canada. He's a black guy. Probably, I think he was like 10th last year.
Mm.
He's not like, he's not ever like one of the top at the Olympia, but I'll DM you later when I think of
Yeah,
that. Maybe I'll include it in here.
the structure on him.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty impressive. I know he's mentioned quite a lot on Nick Strength and Power. Just that his overall like shape and everything is great.
Mm.
So when would be your next competition then? As far as like, would it be a pro show then?
Yeah. So I think I'm still a little bit small for the pro stage, to be
Okay.
quite. After being around like Callum, who just looks ridiculously huge, and plus also like 6 something foot.
Yeah.
But I feel like if I were to even like step on stage right now at a pro level, I likely would not be able to hold my own. And from a strategic standpoint, it's not really wise, especially since I just got out of prep, to be able to go do a pro show, spend a lot of money, and then still continue like my prep after I've been prepping for like 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
I would like to kind of just spend this year, next year, kind of just making a business and creating a specific brand of my own throughout
Okay.
the year, and eventually still do like a proper bulk cycle, try to put on this like 10 pounds or so if it's possible. And
Of stage weight?
just 10 pounds of muscle or 5 to 10 pounds.
Okay.
Get through what I can kind of muster out of me. Because I think the potential is there to be able to basically put whatever I want. And just again, just from this year alone, I can kind of, I think it's possible because this year, all they told me last year was like, you just need to put 5 pounds. And I did.
Yeah. Right.
So I could definitely add that extra 10 pounds and then I could probably be at like 192 on stage weight. And I think the first show that I'm going to do will be the Arnold in 2022.
Okay. Oh, 2022.
Yeah.
Okay. Take a little time. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure the girlfriend will like a little break from the dieting. How'd she handle you during prep?
Pretty good. It pretty good to like the last 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks filled with so much like stress, so much of like everything just coming at you. I mean, I didn't really say this anywhere, but like that following week after my apartment got caught on fire, I was like driving on the highway, and all of a sudden I got a flat tire, so I had to pull over, and I was literally on the highway for about like 6 hours just
Oh
waiting
man.
for a way to get it fixed. And there was something else that was wrong with the car, but I was like on the highway for like such a long period of time because they were trying to find me. And
Jeez.
it's just it's a weird prep. A lot of like crazy stuff happened, one thing after another. Like I think it got to the point where like I literally like cried because
Oh man.
it just like happening left and right. And then it was actually really good because like when I was in that car for that like 6 hours, I kind of came to like a self-realization and just be like, you know what? You've done this for like 6 something months. You're like 2 weeks away. All you have to do is just finish this. That's all you had to do. And then you get to where you want to be. And because of that, I kind of basically just like, it sounds silly, but I was like talking to myself in the car, kind of like motivating myself, saying, you're like, yeah, all this stuff is happening, but there's also some good stuff that are coming out of it. But like, you're so close, you're right there. You just have 2 more weeks, get what you wanted, and then everything's going to be okay. So I just kind of just said that to myself. And then once I got out of that like funk on that Friday when my car sort of kind of had a flat tire, I was just like focused. And
Yeah.
then I just finished strong. And yeah, winning that card was very interesting.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, and I haven't competed. I've done pretty serious diets, and so I definitely understand, like, mentally things just change. Your psychology is just different. So to go through months and months and months of just intense training and dieting and maybe disturbed sleep, everything that goes into that. Yeah, and then, you get in a car accident and then there's a fire. I mean, sometimes it's just something just breaks and
Yeah.
it's just hard to keep it together.
And the funny thing is, like, I took a week off from work so I can kind of just like relax and kind of de-stress myself.
Mm.
For like the past 6 weeks, because of so much like stress, I was literally weighing like 190
Oh, wow.
for like a full 6 weeks. And then like when I decided to take off and then kind of just I just played video games, I
Yeah.
went out of my way to buy a GameCube.
How much did that cost?
uh, an arm and a leg.
Dude, I think it was an N64 that I
Mm,
just like looked up on like eBay or something like a little while ago, and it was absurdly expensive because you just can't get them anymore. So
yeah,
yeah.
a decent amount of money on like the games that I wanted to get, but I I I got the GameCube and I played one of my favorite games that I had when I was growing up as a child, and I just literally just laid in bed, just did cardio, laid in bed, and played video games.
How
And
long did you do that?
hours.
I mean, like, was this like a break for like days or like a
I
week?
had like a week off from work, so within that
Okay.
entire, I basically just did cardio, 2 3 hours of cardio. When I was done in the morning, I just play video games, go back again, just did cardio, play video games, go back again, then just play video games, and then just rest up. Like every single day, as I was getting closer to prep, my weight was just dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping till Thursday finally hit. I was like 182 on the dot on Thursday, and Friday I didn't know how much I weighed, so I kind of like starved myself a little because I wasn't really sure if I was gonna make weight. And
This was the Friday right beforehand.
yeah, it was like the Thursday night going to Friday for the weigh-in. So I didn't eat much and drink. I didn't drink water or anything, but I was like pissing tremendously. And eventually, when I woke up and I got the weigh-in at like 2 o'clock, and then the guy was just like, "You're 177." I was like, "Oh wow."
Wow.
Oh. And and that was pretty much it. And I was pretty excited I made weight.
So obviously, you're at going to a pro level, it gets more and more competitive. As far as like the supplementation side of bodybuilding, I mean, what are your thoughts on that as you continue to increase and go to higher levels?
So I think there's something that most people don't usually do when it comes to bodybuilding and then being able to go to the higher level. Um, at just the local level itself, you tend to see a lot of guys use a lot of supplementations to get them to where they need to be. And eventually, when those guys use as much as they are, when they get to like the national stage, their entire hormonal system is completely fried because they've used so much. And then if they do end up getting their pro card, they don't really take it that far because they've already used so much to even compete at such a local national level that like for them to go even further, they have to use even more. Um, Generally, in terms of supplementation, what I would usually recommend for people to do is just use less, focus a lot more on your diet, your training protocols, recovery, and when it comes to super supplements, just don't use a lot because at the end of the day, you can use all the supplements in the world that you can, but if you don't have the right diet, the right training, the right recovery system, the right like stress reliever, you're basically just kind of just pumping yourself with drugs, and you're not really going to get much out of it. So, uh, I definitely recommend that people should just use a lot less.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times people, understandably, when they're at like the higher levels, they don't get into specifics. I do think it's interesting. You have people like Mike Gisertel and Jared Feather who are pretty open, about kind of crossing over that side. And I mean, I haven't heard them talk about any specifics, but they do talk about using low to moderate doses.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be curious to know what that looks like for them because I think for everybody it's different. You hear some people say, well, I don't use anything crazy, and then they're on like 3 grams per week, and it's like
Yeah.
that's actually quite a bit, and vice versa. So I think perspective is part of it. I've heard some people get like legitimate pharmacy grade stuff, and obviously that's often going to be more potent than if you're just getting some random crap that could be underdosed. It
Mm.
obviously opens up a whole a new can of worms that you need to understand. So now it's not, that's the thing. Like in one sense, it makes the process a lot easier in the sense that obviously muscle growth is a lot easier when you have assistance. However, there is also another huge factor now that you have to consider that it's not just nutrition, it's not just training now. You have this whole pharmacology aspect to consider,
Mm-hmm.
and that will often change throughout, let's say, a contest prep. So
Mm.
now it's like, well, did I lose weight because, something with my training? Did I lose weight because of my diet? Or did I lose weight because I changed compounds? And, this compound doesn't hold as much water. I mean, in theory, if you were on a compound that held a lot of water, you could actually, if you came off of that, you could lose weight, but not be losing any fat and not realize that your diet is off. I mean, there's just one more thing that you have to consider. So it can get complicated for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, and when it comes to like supplementation, definitely get like your dry compounds, your wet compounds here and there. It's also how like you manipulate like what you have, especially like let's say during prep. Most would start off at like let's say the basics, like a test and some oral or something to go along with. They'll do that for like an extended period of time. And as they get closer to their contest prep, they would probably drop the test and eventually add the more dry compound like mast, like test probe for just like more frequent injection to kind of reduce water retention, like you were saying. Hence, that way they're like dropping weight, but they're losing fat in a sense, and they're not having all that extra water weight holding them down to kind of like bloat them up and whatnot. So definitely, the start of prep, you always want to start with like a moderate dose per se. I mean, yes, diet is it can be a little bit of a nuance with dieting where essentially like how do I put this? From my perspective, when it comes to using supplements, they're only there to supplement what you're already doing. So if you don't have like the best diet and the best training method, supplements will only take you so far. But if you have all those combined, the supplements, yeah, will aid a little bit, but it's not like they're magical to the point where like they make such a huge difference that all of a sudden you're like, from one night you're like this, and then like the other night you're like Phil Heath.
Sure.
But it needs food. It needs food. It needs the proper training stimulus to be effective. And what I've learned is that when it comes to supplements, is that supplementations essentially are just there to help you recover faster and allow food to be able to go into the body a lot quicker, and you can kind of distribute that using nutrient petitioning. And that's essentially, from my perspective, that's essentially all they do. Where if you are someone who's natural and you're prepping for a show, you don't have that extra fast delivery to the muscle or to your that nutrients to be absorbed as fast. So that's the only I just think personally that's the only difference, is that it allows for faster recovery. But anyways, yeah, you start off with like maybe like a test and like an oral, and then the closer you get to the show, you kind of like take some tests off and then take some orals off a little bit. Start with some like mast and tren, and then start with like your a little bit drier compound, like your Winnie, and then you start with like your your like anti-estrogen to kind of help take the water away eventually. But eventually, when you do get closer and closer to the show, you end up taking things here one at a time, and you kind of just get to the point where you're just using faster ester to kind of help the water to go away and all that.
So as far as when you finish up the show, do you find that maybe a lot of the people that will come off completely? Or, I mean, obviously there's like the whole thing between blasting and cruising and kind of staying on something all the time versus trying to get recovery back. How are you seeing it with the people that you interact with nowadays?
So it's funny. I don't think many people do it the way that I see certain people that I interact with do it.
Hmm.
Um, People want to be able to use that rebound effect. So instead of just coming off completely or lowering the doses, they still keep their supplements ridiculously high to take advantage of that rebound with the extra food and stuff like that. I say, don't do that. But that's personally what I think. I just say don't do that. Like once your show is over, you put your body through so much stress and being in such a low caloric deficit, and then doing all that cardio, damaging your metabolism, destroying your hormones. The first thing that you want to do once your contest is over, just get off everything.
Hmm.
Literally just get off everything, and you can either get off everything or just cruise a little. cruise a little till you're more stabilized. Because I mean, some people tend to cut test out a few weeks out. So if you kind of pop that back in, it helps a lot because now it's kind of like stabilizing your hormones once everything's completely out. You can kind of just like cruise a little bit with that.
Right.
Eventually, get off everything. The reason why I say this is that prep can be so difficult in terms of like psychological, hormonal metabolism and all that, that like your body is so damaged that you being on more stuff is not going to do you any good. You're just damaging yourself further. But if you were to get off everything, kind of give your body the time to kind of heal and recover from everything else, some people would post psychotherapy right after. Like I said, like once the drugs are like completely taken out, your only form of drugs, quote unquote, your only form of drugs should just be rest, don't train it, and food.
So do you think even at the top, I mean, you were competing at the amateur level. Do you think even at, let's say, a higher pro level, a lot of these guys are coming completely off? Or do you think they're staying on at least some, cruise level of TRT to maintain more of their progress?
I think the smarter ones who knows what they're really doing are probably coming off.
Mm.
And I think at that point they understand that. I know I'm repeating myself, and
Right,
I
fine.
know they're not gonna like believe me, but food is key. Like food is just ridiculously, it's just the key. So if you get these guys who have been prepping for so many months, and all of a sudden they're just deprived of food, when you take the hormones away, your only source of to build muscle at that point, right after everything else, is just being in caloric surplus. And you just, I mean, at that point when you're done prep, you just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, and eventually your weight's going to go up without you even having to use anything because you're rebounding.
Yeah, I mean, I see both sides to it. I think, I've had quite a few friends who have experimented, and the problem I see with going from, a high, let's just say a high dosed cycle during your contest prep, and
Mm.
then you come off everything. Now you're going into a big calorie surplus with dropping hormones. And so, even in a natural competition, when your hormones are going to actually be more favorable after the contest prep, you're still going to gain a lot of fat,
Mm.
right? If you just like binge after a natural contest.
Yeah.
Well, if you're enhanced, now you're even more crashed and you're not really going to be recovering that quickly. And you're going to have this large caloric surplus. I mean, I could see somebody putting on a monumental amount of fat if they're not, keeping it reasonably controlled. The other
Mm.
side to that, though, is, and I would say I have a few friends who came off a cycle and then tried to diet afterwards. And to me, like just looking at them, they lost a dramatic amount of size afterwards because it's now like again, your hormones are going down and you're also in a calorie deficit. So I mean, they just lost all the progress that they had made. They
Mm.
lost it. So it seems like after kind of like what you said, after whether you're bulking or cutting, it seems like the best thing after you're done is just try to stabilize as best as
Yeah.
possible. Like don't go crazy. If you try to lose a lot of weight, you can probably lose a lot of muscle. If you try to gain a lot of weight, you can probably gain a ton of fat. It
Mm.
seems like it's best to just try to like recover as best you can, sleep, eat a, controlled diet and try to just get your body back online because I've seen people try to go the other way and it doesn't seem to be very pretty.
They're just, they won't ever stop because now they're like, all right, contest prep is over, and they keep on eating and eating and eating and eating and eating and
Yeah.
eating. And that just becomes a problem. But it's also the mindset itself. Like for me personally, right now, I'm just eating and eating and eating and eating and eating for like a whole week. But you also have to get yourself into that mindset where you're just like, okay, once next week starts, I'm kind of gonna not eat like crap anymore.
Hmm.
And then that's pretty much it. Like you're not getting ready for anything in particular. You're not trying to get super ridiculously lean in particular. And that's where the concept of reverse dieting comes in, which I will be doing on Monday. But like I said, it's like I've been so deprived of food for so many months that like a week of just eating like crap of everything is not going to affect some like it's not going to affect me that much because I also know my body itself. Like
Hmm.
my metabolism is ridiculously fast.
Yeah.
I can kind of get away with what I'm doing. And if I were to tell somebody to do, I wouldn't tell somebody to do what I'm doing. I would not, because they would get ridiculously fat. And so they would find it hard to get out of that mindset to be like, all right, I need to stop eating.
Right. Right. That's a big part of that psychology.
Yeah. So it's the fact that I know I have such a fast metabolism that next week, once I start like a crash diet or whatever, I would probably get down to like 185 easily within 2, 3 days,
So
even though so
what do you
much.
think you'll be up to after the week?
Um, I'm currently 193, and I
Okay.
think I stage probably I weigh in at 177, but after carb loading, I probably weighed in at like 182, 183.
Okay.
So pounds. So by the end of next week, I'll probably still be like 193.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, I'm 193 this morning too. It's like we're the same.
Yeah,
Same physique and everything.
yeah, right. Just gotta take the color around a little.
I was gonna say I just need to get a little tanner
Get
and
a
we're
little
fine.
tan.
My
Yeah,
my cousin, he might be watching this, and he's 17 now, and
yeah.
he's a big kid. He's trying to diet down right now, and he was like, I just want lean muscle. I don't want any bulky muscle like Ronnie Coleman because that's gross. And I was like, all right. So one, you don't have to worry about becoming Ronnie Coleman, but
Yeah.
two, the picture that he showed of this guy with like lean muscle was like one, he was black, so I was like, all right, well, you're gonna have to get a lot, a lot of tan going. But two, the guy was probably like my height and like a lean 230, and I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't, I don't think you have to worry about it.
That's also something to talk about as well. The idea of like body dysmorphia.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah, yeah. If you want to dive into it, I mean, is that something that you deal with personally?
no, I don't actually. I know I'm pretty big, but a lot of people don't. But for me personally, I think it came to a realization maybe 4 or 5 years ago that like I don't need to get ridiculously big.
Yeah.
So that's why I've always stayed around like 195 to 200. Like if I were to tell you the heaviest I've ever been was 210, and that was like 5 years ago, that's the heaviest I've ever been.
Mm,
And after that point, I've just been a stable 195 to 200 pounds for the past 5 years.
really?
Yeah, because I know that like I have such a shape that it's kind of right now at this stage where I'm at, it just doesn't make any sense to put on so much amount of muscle mass. I know everybody wants to put on a lot of size and stuff, but like the more muscle mass that you end up putting on, the more you kind of stray away from what you actually look like, as like your physique is kind of like drastically changing and you get into that that perception and that mentality of just like I need to be bigger, I need to be bigger, I need to be bigger, 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 bigger. And then eventually you kind of just create that like illusion where when you look at yourself, you don't see yourself as big as you truly are
Mm,
because in your head you think it's just never enough. So I kind of passed that point because I realized, okay, I'm pretty big. I don't need to be bigger. 195 to 200 pounds is cool. And I've been with it for 5 years. So it doesn't really
sometimes
hit.
and like this sounds like a jerk comment, but not to you, but just in general. Like sometimes, though, I think people, especially in social media, it's almost popular now to say like, oh, everybody's fat shaming or everybody has body dysmorphia. And it's like a lot of people do have body dysmorphia, obviously.
Yeah, totally.
But also part of it is like, well, your perceptions just change, like, okay, maybe you think this income is good, but then you start hanging around with more successful people and you realize actually that income isn't that great.
Yeah.
This income is good. And it's just ever changing. And so as a bodybuilder, when we're like trying to improve our physiques, it's like, for instance, if I look at my physique, I'm like, I'm not terribly happy with it. Now, over 16, 17 years, I'm now content with where I am because I know it's not going to change that much.
Mhm.
But from a bodybuilding or like a physique standpoint, it's fine. And that's not body dysmorphia. I know that I look better than 98% of the general population.
Yeah, I
What's
did
that?
tell people they don't get it.
Right. And it's like, it's not like okay, so when I was really young, I think I had like a legitimate body dysmorphia because I was so skinny, but I just wanted abs. And it's like I couldn't really see that. I mean, I knew how skinny I was, but I still wanted the abs. But at this point, it's like, no, I know that I look better than most people, but from what I'm judging myself relative to,
Mhm.
it's not that good. And I'm okay with that because it's like I want to strive. I mean, there's a point where it's unhealthy, obviously. It's all relative to what you're trying to compare to. And if you're in a physique sport, I don't know if that necessarily is dysmorphia. I mean, we see true dysmorphia, but I think it's almost thrown around too much. The term is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think it is actually, but there are legitimate people out there. I think it's more. It's not more about like there's just legitimate people out there who like they're ridiculously big,
Hmm.
like they're so freaking huge, but then they themselves don't see that they're that big.
Oh yeah, it definitely happens, and for women too. Like they don't see that they're skinny enough. I mean, it's a legitimate, real problem.
Yeah,
I just think that sometimes it's thrown around where it's like, yeah, I mean, or you just actually, you can just see legitimate flaws. I mean, we all have things that we're not going to like about each other or about ourselves. I don't know if that's always a wrong perception. It's just
yeah,
sometimes you just have to understand, like, yeah, this is that. And you talked before about like mindset. You can recognize something without it being like terribly affecting your psychology. Some people will say, like, oh, I'm whatever, bald. And they're just like, I just accept that I'm bald. And there's other people where it's like, holy crap, like I can't go on with my life. And I think how you
how you like perceive yourself and who you are as a person definitely changes that entire mindset of like
right.
how everyone else thinks about you. I would go in places literally everywhere I go. I'm like the biggest person there.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't bother me. I don't care about it, but like other people do, and I'm just like, why do you care? It's just
Well, and I think it also depends on what your self-worth is, based on. So
mm,
I'll give you an example. So like my accountant, so I'm a dentist, obviously, and my accountant has like, fine teeth, not really that great teeth. So one of the dentists I've worked with who he's worked with for like, decades has offered him numerous times to fix his teeth. And he literally doesn't care. He's like, because that's not his self-worth. He's a great accountant. He's got a lot of money, good family. He literally like could probably get this done for free. And he's just like, nope, I don't want it done. But if you're like an influencer or whatever, that's your identity, right? And as, a
well,
bodybuilder, that's your identity.
it doesn't have to be your identity. Um, People actually like people on social media accept and like people who are authentic. But
Sure.
it's the fact that the entire social media spectrum is so full of fake people that people don't want to be authentic. They just want to be like everybody else. Like back when you were saying about like the whole teeth thing, like my teeth are pretty fucked up. They're ridiculously fucked up. They're so bad that it's not even funny. But it's like I was, I'm pretty stubborn. I was born this way, and my teeth they're fucked up. Am I allowed to curse?
You can curse.
My teeth are messed up. How about that? But like, I don't really care. Like, I could fix it, but to me, it's just like I have so much more to offer than just what my teeth look like. I'm a nice person. I care about people. I do what I can to help other people. Just because I have really screwed up teeth, that doesn't mean it should bother me and stuff like that. And now I have to change it so other people can accept me because I have messed up teeth.
Right,
It's
right.
Audi belly button. And like, I remember when my post went viral, that's like the only thing that people could like pinpoint at. Like, I was a little bit like, have these guys never seen like an Audi belly button before? Because I'm originally from Africa, but like there it's like so common to see an Audi belly because like the way that they cut the umbilical cords are just like so messed up because the
Mm,
practice in terms of like newborn babies is all screwed up. So you can see it a lot more often there. But when you come
okay.
to like the Western world, it's a lot more like perfect practice in terms of like cutting the umbilical cord to the T where it makes perfect sense and you kind of just like cut it the right way and it doesn't have that scar tissue left over. So when people see my my Audi or hernia or whatever, they assume, oh my god, dude, doesn't that hurt? You should get that fixed. Like there's something wrong with it. You should do it. I'm just like, no, it doesn't bother me. Like nothing's wrong with it. It's like I'm not gonna change it because you, who I don't know, tells me to shit. Like who are you?
Well,
So
dude, that's a great mindset, man. I mean, seriously, especially given that you are kind of like an influencer and you're putting yourself out there to be critiqued on social media, that's a unusually healthy mindset that I think a lot of people don't have.
like when you're an influencer, like it's weird, but like I know like we post pictures of our bodies and we're supposed to be these perfect people and stuff like that, but you don't have to promote that. You just promote who you are as a person with the imperfection, the flaws, and everything that you have. Eventually, those who understand the value that you give them other than your body will realize to be like, he gives out good information. He keeps in touch with the people that he's following. He makes jokes, posts anime stuff, does all this other stuff. Like, you're giving value to people. Your body and the way that you look is not I mean, I guess it can be valuable, but there's literally no substance in there. You just post pictures of yourself and then you get likes to boost your ego. But like most influencers don't give that value to people. All the only value that they have to offer is just how they look. And that's why they're so like, oh, my teeth has to be perfect. Oh, my body has to be perfect. Oh, this has to be this. I have to have like all these nice cars. I have to do this. I have to do that. So like everyone can be so I can be validated by everybody else. Like if you're influencer, you don't have to do any of that. It's your page. You do what the hell you want. Like seriously.
I think that is a great point to end on because it's a message that I think everybody needs to like take to heart, especially if they're kind of in this space. So dude, I think that's great. I'm gonna definitely like, put that as a clip somewhere. But dude, and you mentioned your Instagram's been blowing up. You've been doing some coaching and stuff. So where can people find that page and more about you?
So what they can do is they can go to my YouTube channel, which is Kanu Fitness. Just type in Kanu Fitness, it'll show up. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that I've done. And they can also go to my website that I'm currently working on. It's kanufitness.com. And also if they're trying to look for me on Instagram, it's Kanu Lift. The funny thing is my name, I pronounce it wrong because I don't like the way that it's actually pronounced. It's actually pronounced Kanu, but that's so boring. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to make it can you because it just makes sense. So you put it with like, can you lift? Can you dig it? Can you swim? And all that other stuff.
So it's actually Kanu. I've been saying canoe, and you've been saying here, can
Cool.
you?
You're cool with saying it canoe or can you or whatever. You're
Okay.
I make it how I want it to be sounded. It's my name.
Sounds good, man. Well, thank you for taking the time, bud.
Yeah, man. You're welcome.